Welcome to The Authority File, the podcast that features conversations about the life cycle of scholarly communication. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice. In this 4-episode series, which is generously underwritten by Springer Nature, we're discussing the important role that the humanities and social sciences play in the development, use, and policy guidance of artificial intelligence in mainstream society. As we begin to experience AI's transformation of the research workflow, it will be the humanities that influence its responsible use. Joining me to talk this through is Anil Chandy, Vice President of Humanities, Social Sciences, Books, and Focus Projects at Springer Nature and Managing Director of Springer Nature's Singapore office. But before we get started, if you want to keep up on the latest programming from the Authority File, you can subscribe to our monthly newsletter for information on the current and previous month's episodes. To subscribe, simply visit choice360.org, click on the newsletter sign-up banner in the top right corner, and select the podcast updates option. While you're there, you can also sign up for other newsletters published by Choice. In this second episode of our series, we talk about regulation and guidelines that publishers and other scholarly communication sectors are implementing to shape AI usage. All right, so let's continue with the idea of AI regulation, but maybe from like a publisher's perspective. Um, can you give an overview of the AI guidelines publishers are implementing? Publishers such as yourself. What kind of leadership are publishers looking to when creating their guidelines? Can you give us a peek into sort of the deliberations there?
Yeah. Um, uh, Very briefly, quite a lot is going on and still
Hmm.
evolving in this area. And most publishers are sort of starting with foundational principles requiring disclosure of AI generated content in article writing or book writing, making clear that AI cannot be credited, for instance, as an author, and ensuring that AI doesn't replace, say, editorial judgment, primarily peer review.
Yep.
But these policies, like I said, are evolving very quickly. Industry bodies in academic publishing, especially, have also established guidelines to ensure sort of transparency and integrity. The Committee on Publication Ethics, COPE, states that AI tools cannot be listed as authors of papers. Similarly, the International Association of Scientific, Technical, and Medical Publishers, STM, has released a report classifying AI use in manuscript preparation to guide transparent usage.
Hmm.
At Springer Nature, we drew up an early set of principles that both the organization, its stakeholders, and its customer and collaborators had to follow, which stresses sort of human control, fairness, ensuring dignity, respect, and minimizing harm to society and environment. And also transparency. That's, of course, disclosure and human leadership and accountability in any kind of AI intervention.
Hmm.
There's also a strict adherence to privacy policy and data governance. The kind of leadership that you asked that publishers are looking to when developing these guidelines, this is very much a collaborative endeavor, I would say. Involves multiple stakeholders from different domains and expertise, involving legal experts or ethics boards and editorial teams, and the academic community, whose normative or whose norms is what academic publishing generally follows.
Yep.
So these guidelines are essentially developed by talking to various stakeholders, also looking at how content is accessed, and also maintaining the robustness of our dissemination platforms and other details.
Hmm.
So it's coming from multiple directions, Bill. Legal experts, research boards, editorial. We are also seeing alignment with broader policy efforts like the EU AI Act or other national AI strategies. Publishers are trying to stay, I would say, flexible because what works in medical publishing might not apply neatly to humanities or social sciences. So I think we need to keep an open mind here. And the landscape is evolving quite fast as well.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I'm curious, like as you mentioned, some of these governing bodies, between sort of industry governance and more governmental governments, and even something coming from the EU. How are you? How does a company like yourself kind of measure and weigh, those recommendations and guidance coming from these various sources in terms of which one to pay more attention to, or are you kind of cherry picking from each what's needed?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. In fact, I would say we probably pay attention to all of it. We
Yeah.
we are nowadays quite dedicatedly following policy movements in the space.
Hmm.
So, primarily as a European organization, of course, we do pay very close attention
Yeah.
to developments in the EU.
Mm.
But as a global business,
Yeah.
and we are very much present in the United States and other parts of the world as well, including China. We do pay a lot of attention to national legislation
Yeah.
and see how things are evolving. So there are our editors and our academic affairs colleagues do stay constantly in touch with officials from both the public affairs committees and other governmental bodies, as well as we talk constantly to universities. And we are also talking to our authors and our content creators, who are our critical stakeholders. So
Hmm.
there are a lot of conversations that are going. We try not to do too many knee-jerk kind of reactions. So we let it, we have to study and establish it. And there is also a legal perspective required on many, many things, because it involves content. That content is usually contracted and published under specific jurisdictions and laws. So we pay attention to many of these.
Hmm.
We also do work quite closely with other copyright management organizations and other organizations like that, IFRO, for instance, around the world, or its own national bodies in various markets. Overall, I would say that we are not just sort of mimicking a policy specifically, but nevertheless, at the same time, we do stay attuned to what are the developments, and we choose to be reactive here in
Okay.
terms of how things are evolving, rather than leading to establish something. Except when it comes to, say, things like authorship or research integrity practices relating to the use of AI technology in preparing content.
Excellent. Okay. You mentioned some of the key stakeholders that you're also, you know, listening to and paying close attention to, such as authors and specific institutions. And I'm wondering why you might think it's important for all sectors of scholarly communication to invest in AI regulation and oversight. What kind of vantage point do libraries, for example, have on AI that publishers may lack or may want to pay special attention to?
Hmm. Yeah, that's an important question. And I would say, because AI fundamentally has the capability to touch everything.
Yeah.
So we have dealt with technological change of vast proportions in the past. I mean, the internet was the last one. We
Mhm.
all adapted to it. But AI possibly goes beyond that in some senses, in terms of its ability to, even sort of guide behavior and also legislation. Um, how researchers discovered, consumed, evaluated, even created, that is all, these are all facets of research dissemination. If regulation only sits with one part of the information environment, say us publishers, or vice versa, with some government, some institution, it's likely to leave some gaps. Libraries, for example, have strong insight into user access patterns, for instance, or privacy concerns. I mean, they are essentially guiding their patrons as well.
Mhm.
So universities are thinking about student use and AI literacy, which means that we need a collective approach to get this absolutely right.
Yeah.
I mentioned the STM Association's draft paper earlier. They have an integrity hub, for instance, which integrates AI tools to detect unethical practices like paper mills, for instance, ensuring the credibility of scholarly publications. At Springer Nature, too, we have made fairly significant investments recently in creating teams focused on research integrity and shaping technological tools that can assist the broader scientific or scholarly community. Some of these tools are built with AI assistance, because
Mm.
that environment is constantly changing, and you have to sort of adapt with it. But all the stakeholders play an important role in how we develop these methods and tools going forward.
Excellent. And then just kind of circling back to the humanities and social sciences, again, how can perspectives from those fields on ethics, bias, and cultural context, for example, help inform, what you've just talked about, sort of the responsible AI policy development?
Yeah, and most importantly, I think HSS or humanities, social sciences subjects, they often bring the right context.
Yeah.
HSS disciplines help us to understand, for instance, how AI intersects with history, with maybe identity, ethics, and power. As say, we are we are a set of interpretative sciences, right? So, for example, they can flag how a neutral algorithm might reinforce systemic biases or fail across cultures if applied. HSS disciplines also provide some very critical insights into the societal implications of AI. We've seen sort of research from academics such as Terry Flew, who has argued for a deeper conversation between AI research and humanities to ensure that technological advancements align with societal values.
Mhm.
The great news is that there is an increasing recognition of this critical need to plug HSS scholarship into how AI model use and governance functions. And you have many examples now spouting even in the United States, and Carnegie Mellon is one such. I mean, school known for excellence in computer science, but there is a lot of interdisciplinarity there in terms of how AI model development, use, and governance, and the criticality of humanities, social sciences disciplines is very much understood. That's
Mhm.
a good example, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. You just heard from Anil Chandy, Vice President of Humanities, Social Sciences, Books, and Focus Projects at Springer Nature and Managing Director of Springer Nature's Singapore office. Join us next week when we discuss how AI can enhance the publishing process, particularly for research discovery, accessibility, translation, and peer review. We also look back at Springer's 2019 experimental publication of a machine-generated title. This series is underwritten with generous support from Springer Nature. Remember, if you want to keep up on the latest programming from the Authority File, you can subscribe to our monthly newsletter for information on the current and previous month's episode. To subscribe, simply visit choice360.org, click on the newsletter sign up banner in the top right corner, and select the Choice Podcast Updates option. While you're there, you can also sign up for other newsletters published by Choice. As always, underwriting opportunities for the Authority File podcast are directed by Choice's advertising director, Pam Marino, and all of our episodes are produced and edited by Choice's digital media producer, Sabrina Kofer, with support from digital media assistant Ashley Roy. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.